Good morning, Oakwood. I wanted to share with you a quick devotional this morning from Genesis, reading through the Bible with y'all as a church this year. And the story of Joseph having his firstborn son born to him in Egypt. And then what happened shortly thereafter with his brothers coming back to town because of the famine. So we get this scene in Genesis 41:51 where Joseph has received Manasseh into his life, his firstborn son, and he says that God has made me forget all of my past sufferings, all the hardships that I had in my family's house. And it's this, you get this sense of, hey, my life is here in Egypt now. I had suffering. I've been at the bottom of the barrel. But God, you have elevated me to this status, and you have shown it to me specifically in giving me a son. You know, it's a fresh start. It's a way to start over. He's free from his brothers, from the betrayal that he had, or so he thought. And so we all know how the story plays out. After this scene, the famine starts, the 7 years of famine, and his family comes back into his life and walks into this throne room and are confronted with this scene of forced reconciliation or hatred or emotions. It's hard to put a phrase in the words because, again, it's easy to read the story and think that it was magic and that it happened quickly, but this is the course of months, if not maybe many months, of the brothers not knowing who Joseph was, but Joseph knowing who his brothers were, recognizing them and having this tormented feeling of, do I forgive them? What does forgiveness look like? Am I going to be reconciled to them? Am I going to have life? Am I going to use my power to once and for all be done with my past? Or am I going to be able to? So it's these hundreds of thoughts that have to be racing through his mind. And we're given the glimpse of a few of them. But specifically what I wanted to share this morning is the juxtaposition of the two events of Joseph receiving this blessing of his son and the irony of, and God has allowed me to forget the suffering that I had in my father's house. And then the very next scene in our scriptures, but again, many months later, was his family walking back into his life. And there are these unexpected visitors and the consequences that brings with it. And we have to remember as the church and as individual families inside of individual relationships, and whether that be friendships that were broken through neglect or through just events outside of your control, as was the case with Joseph. And again, this is obviously on an extreme case. Not many of us have been put in a situation that Joseph has on any of the levels or any of the events, let alone all of them. But it's an amazing story that it's foreshadowing of the gospel of this. It's not enough just to receive good gifts and think that makes everything okay. What we have in the gospel isn't magic. It's not this spiritual switch that turns on and makes everything okay. As we can all testify in the here and now. And I'm not even talking about the so-called first world problems, but the ones of the soul, of forgiveness, of people that have wronged you willingly, or maybe just out of neglect. And it's very, very easy to do some of what Joseph did. You know, the stories, he didn't instantly forgive his brothers, and he's wrestling with what to do. He's messing with them on some level, and it's easy to kind of read this tongue-in-cheek about the stories of the cups and the grains, but he had full authority to extract revenge and fix it. And praise be to God, he didn't. And And to jump to the end of the whole story, the end of Genesis, we get Joseph nearing his deathbed and forgiving his brothers and giving them grace and mercy and reminding them, he says, it's the scriptures that we all know and love and should echo is, brothers, what you intended for evil, God has worked it for your good. What you meant for evil has put me in a place that I was able to act and to store grain ups. And so now you all receive salvation because of the evil. He never once said that it was good that what they did to him. It was never insane to say that God intended evil. But what he says is what you brothers intended to do as an evil act, God has made into a blessing. And it's an important distinction to make. It's a nuanced phrasing, but it's very important. Evil is not good. Suffering is not good. We should all mourn together at the suffering of our neighbors. And I think what Faye said in church this last Sunday was articulated excellent and has so much truth to it of sometimes, if not many times, we need to be willing to sit down and shut up and be there with our brothers and understand that God will ultimately make all of this evil untrue. But we're faced with the same thing that Joseph faced, the here and now, the what do I do with these people that wronged me, that are in the room in front of me, and I now have the power to exact and extract vengeance. We, again, praise be to God, have the full revelation of the gospel and the scriptures of the Messiah come and what that means to us. Can you imagine being Joseph without having the full canon of scripture and what that required? And it requires the same thing that we're required today, and that is an active relationship with God the Father, not of the gifts that he gives, but with the giver. And that's really the big thing that stood out to me is, yeah, Manasseh came at a place in Joseph's life that he felt like he was been restored and was freed from his demons. But God wasn't done with changing him. So there's a lot more here. It's, as with all these stories, they're complex and they're multi-layered, and the big thing to remember, and the big thing that I got out of studying it again, is that don't be so quick to glaze over the details, because the details are there to help us, to remind us that, again, what we believe isn't magic. It is divine, and that is different. And we can have a whole other conversation on that, and we should. And we should do that daily to each other, to understand how God is at work and how God means to work in our families and our brokenness. So let's join together with Joseph's words near his deathbed of, brothers, what you intended for evil, God has worked to really to save you. And so let's be God's agents. Let's be active and working, and let's find and strike the balance of wisdom of how to act and when to act, and when, and I mentioned it, when to shut up, when to be quiet. I've learned a lot through the last couple of weeks reading this, and I've brought it up in Sunday school, and I brought it up the other night with a friend, is I'm blessed, and I think many of us are, and it's very important to remind ourselves to join to join each other in stirring each other up to remember that we are. So I'm very thankful that we have the opportunity to study together and to encourage each other. And I hope this finds you well. And I love you all, and I'll see you soon.